to welcome our next speaker, who is the commissioner of the recently appointed commissioner of the Inspectional Services Department. But I'd like to say a couple of things about him before he starts to speak, because I think our members should know a couple of things. Number one, he has extensive experience with the city, having served the city for 25 years in various capacities. He's been assigned to put out fires here and there in city departments. He's also been working in the Inspectional Services Department for 17 years, so I can't imagine anyone who would be more attuned to the procedures of ISD. The further and final important thing that I want to say is that he is a dedicated public servant who has academic credentials, and he has not taken them to the private sector yet. He is a graduate in political science from BU, but he also has a Master of Urban Affairs from BU and a Master of Public Administration from Suffolk University. So thank you for coming tonight, and welcome to the North End Waterfront community.
Thank you for such a warm welcome. My apologies for not being able to attend the last meeting. I think it was September. It's been a very fast-moving 6 months since I returned to ISD. But I've heard a lot of really good things about this group. Really thoughtful, informed folks, well-organized, and I can certainly see that here tonight. So thank you for the opportunity to be here. It's been a very fulfilling thing for me to be able to have returned to Inspectional Services. That's where I began working with the city, and I thought I was going to be there for a short stint and go back to school, but I fell in love with public service and the impact that ISD has on the city in so many ways. I think it's an unbelievable agency, and I really thank Mayor Walsh for giving me the opportunity to go back there and work with so many talented and passionate people who want to be the best. And my goal with returning to the ISD is just to keep it moving forward. Commissioner Christopher made a lot of gains during his time there, but you know it's very difficult. It's like a giant ship that we're trying to steer in the right direction and keep it moving forward, and the tides affect you and different things come and go. So there are challenges that I was familiar with when I was there last in 2012, but now we have new challenges like short-term rentals, which that wasn't a thing back then. So I think I'll start up there because I know there's great interest in what we're doing to enforce or implement the short-term rental ordinance, and I know this has a lot of big impact in this part of the city. I looked at the numbers, and the numbers that I have is all for Ward 3, so it's not exactly just in the North End, but I know that in Ward 3, I think we have the most complaints. We've issued like 41 fines just in this area alone. We've had quite a number of applications for folks to register. Actually, I have numbers here. I know that we've denied like 71 of the 139 short-term rental applications have been denied because they were deemed to be ineligible. So backing out of that, just to give you a quick overview of where the city is with the short-term rental ordinance. The ordinance was passed in 2018. Subsequent to that, there was litigation between Airbnb and the city. We negotiated a very good settlement in August this year that helps to enforce the ordinance. Beginning December 1st, Airbnb is requiring that anyone from the Boston area has to have a registration number from the city of Boston in order for them to post on Airbnb's platform. We're currently having negotiations with about 17 other platforms so that we can have similar things in agreements with them. And the state has also stepped in and done their part where, as of December 1st, every platform will have to meet state registration and certification requirements. With respect to enforcement, we had a sunset period that ended in September 1st this year. Prior to that, when we received complaints, we sent out warning letters, and we took that time to really fine-tune our enforcement tools. A big part of that is a contract that we have with a third-party vendor that specializes in compliance with short-term rental. What this company essentially does for us is they search about 50 platforms 24/7, and they gather information quite often down to the unit level on postings that are in the Boston area on any of these platforms. They match up the addresses to what we have in our database for eligible and registered properties, and that gives us a proactive enforcement tool that gives us really strong evidence to move forward with. Since October, we've issued 378 fines, totaling about $75,000. We're sort of near the end of the first 30-day period of issuing fines, and our plan is, because violators have 21 days to appeal our fines or pay the fines, every 30 days we're reviewing to see if fines have been paid, if they've stopped offering these units, or if they continue to do so, and use the additional evidence that we've gathered over the previous 30 days to issue additional rounds of fines. We're still early in that process, and down the road, if we find that there are operators who are willing to pay the fines because they're making so much money, they won't be able to continue doing business just by paying fines. We're going to monitor compliance based on our initial enforcement, which is fines, and if we need to take additional action vis-a-vis lawsuits, litigation, we're prepared to do so. The mayor is very serious about this. It's a high priority for him and for you, and so we're going to do our very best to make sure that we're enforcing it and it works as intended. In addition to the proactive measures, respond to complaints. So we're encouraging folks to send complaints our way. Use 311 or send us an email. The 311, I think, gives you better tracking capability. We're currently working to upgrade the 311 app so that there is an explicit complaint type on that app for short-term rentals as well. So let us know, because I think the combination helps us to really prioritize who we should be focusing on with our enforcement efforts. Before I move on from short-term rentals, any questions on short-term rentals?
Anyone?
Did the mayor increase your budget in this area?
Yes.
By how much?
We were given 2 additional employees to help with the enforcement of short-term rentals. And initially, those employees, the resources were earmarked for 2 additional housing inspectors. I wanted to wait and sort of make sure that we knew exactly what we needed to do enforcement. And it turns out that we have enough housing inspectors to do enforcement, and that most often short-term rental investigation didn't require an inspection. It's really a data-driven process. It's really a research and administrative process to find out if someone's posted something, get screenshots of it, issue fines. But on some occasions, we do need to send an inspector out in the field. But we have 30 housing inspectors already. What we really needed are folks who are data analysts. So we have repurposed those resources, and we're in the process now of creating job opportunities for 2 data analysts that will focus on short-term rentals, but also will be able to help Inspectional Services with other data analyst needs.
Commissioner, today was there a city council committee exploring some Airbnb issues, do you know? And did anybody from ISD attend, testify?
Yes, there was a hearing this afternoon in the City Council, about 3.5, 4 hours, but I wasn't counting. And I did represent ISD. It was a very good hearing. We heard a lot from the community, both for and against having these type of restrictions on folks being able to participate in the short-term rental market. But ultimately, our role at the hearing was to talk about the law as it is now and what we're doing to implement and enforce it and to provide an update to the city council and to the public.
Do you, my second and final question, do you have data on the north end as either fines are given out or warnings? Are there ways that we can assist and we can also monitor what's happening in our neighborhood?
Yeah, so we currently have data available on our short-term rental page where there's some open data that you can take a look at, but we do need to improve it, and we're going to add fines so you can easily see what addresses that we've issued fines to. But I'd say in Ward 3 overall, we've issued 42 fines, that's just in 1 month.
If my math is correct, you've approved more than 50, well more than 50 applications in Ward 3.
No. We've denied 71 out of 139, so we've issued 33.
And what, but my key question is, what are the situations under which they would be approved?
So it has to be a owner-occupied property, 1 to 3 family. That's, those are the main criteria. Then they have to identify how they plan to participate. Is it they can do limited share when an owner leaves their unit and rents it out. Actually, has someone share the unit with them. There's owner share, and then there's owner adjacent. So if someone has a 2-family or 3-family, and they want to rent out one of their units as a short-term rental, they can participate.
But they have to live there.
But they have to live there.
Thank you.
Hi. I thought you did a great job at the City Council
As
hearing
you do.
today. I wanted to ask about one specific North End situation, although some other neighborhoods are affected, and one general issue. The first is we're an ADU, additional dwelling unit neighborhood. And ADUs are specifically restricted so that they can't be short-term rentals, according to the ordinance that was passed. And I'm wondering what protections ISD has put up to make sure that you guys don't accidentally issue an allowance for using an ADU as a short-term rental. Do you have a firewall up for that?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I can't give you an answer to that right now, but we will give you an answer to what we've done. Sure, we have some process in place to prevent that from happening. That's probably a part of there's a data set that was put together for ISD by our analytics team, and we use that for our first pass of determining eligibility. So that data set has all these different parameters, whether or not someone has what am I thinking of? Let's say homeowner's exemption, the residential exemption, whether or not they have open violations and things of that nature. So I think it's very easy for us to make sure that ADUs are another filter that will show up on the first pass to determine eligibility.
And the second one was what came up today a fair amount, the executive suite, quote-unquote, loophole, whereby if some entity changes occupancy from residential to executive suite, and in some North End it's an allowed use, you don't even have to go through neighborhood process to get that done. How that can be stopped. There is something that the city did. They're actually changing it so that there are no allowed use switches from residential to executive suite, and there's a hearing at the Zoning Commission in January just to make sure that goes into law. But currently there's a lot of activity in the city by Sonder, by Stay Alfred, by 3 or 4 other large aggregators of short-term rentals to try to switch as many residential units over to executive suite zoning so that they can evade the ordinance. And I'm wondering if you guys have put any stops in place so that when you see any of this stuff coming, people asking for a change of occupancy to executive suite, you're just stopping it cold.
Yes, that safeguard is in place. As you pointed out, the zoning commission hearing has been noticed with respect to changing executive suites to a conditional or forbidden use in every neighborhood. So just that notice alone allows us to hold any applications that are before us now until the zoning commission has made a decision, and then that decision will apply to those pending applications.
Okay. There were 2 that somehow made it to the ZBA a couple of weeks ago after the notice went into the Herald, and they were discovered by Chinatown sister organizations, and I got alerted to it, and I think we let you guys know about it. I don't think it went anywhere, but somehow a couple of these did make it to the ZBA, and I just wanted to offer that up. I think there may be some leakage in the system that ISD may want to look at plugging up, and it may be that the ZBA also needs to be coached that if these things come to it, they shouldn't just say yes. And I don't know, like, who would do that if ISD has that kind of relationship with
Definitely would not be
ZBA?
ISD.
Yeah, all right, well,
ZBA.
it's unclear to us who gets through to the ZBA anyhow, so anyhow.
But it'll be a part of the community process, and that's what we want to see.
Right.
If someone wants to operate an executive suite, then it should come to the community, and it should be decided in a public process. So, I know this year we have approved 2 executive suite applications prior to this. One is related to Saunders. And,
Right, the Pierce building.
The
I
Pierce
think.
building,
Yeah,
yes.
right.
So, we don't want things like that to go through as allowed uses.
Yeah.
The community definitely should weigh in on those.
That was a bad one because it was 2 full floors of a building, and I think about 30 units or something like that. So, but they tried to sneak it in, and it was Sonder that did that. So,
Yeah.
more of that coming. But I'm glad to hear that you put the firewall up.
Yeah, and there's even more that we would even want to talk about tonight with folks who have established this business model for themselves.
Yes.
They're doing quite well, and they don't want to see it change. So they're trying to find different ways to avoid complying with the ordinance. Folks are reaching out, are attempting to use hospital stay. We've denied every single application so far for hospital stay, which is one of the exemptions under the ordinance. But you have to prove that you have a contract with the hospital. You also have to prove that you're a charitable nonprofit registered with the Secretary of State. So once we start asking for those type of documents, they tend to just abandon their applications.
Right. Fantastic. Thank you very much for the great job you're doing, too.
You're welcome. Teamwork.
Questions? Why can they show a utility bill and a driver's license? Like, if you are a landlord, you could be paying utilities, and a lot of people don't update their license when they move, so it feels like there's a lot of loopholes in what people could submit here.
Yeah, well, definitely, those are among the list of things that are asked for in the criteria to prove that it's an owner occupancy situation, and they're definitely, there are ways for folks to try to game the system.
Right.
And that's why I'm encouraging folks to also let us know, because the community is, can be very helpful to us with enforcement. We had one address that came up at the council hearing today in South Boston. They applied, they provided us with the criteria, we approved their registration, and we got complaints from the community, from the neighborhood coordinator, from the city councilor, saying that the owner does not live at this property. We sent someone out, an inspector talked to folks who are staying there, and they said, no, the owner doesn't live there. The owner disagreed with us and tried to provide more information to prove that they actually live there. We sent another inspector out at another time, and they confirmed what the first inspector found. So based on that information, we suspended their accounts and we've issued fines. But no system is foolproof, but we have a very good system in place to sort of vet them, and that's why we're seeing about half of the applications so far have been denied.
Anybody else have more questions?
So I think that,
About anything? I'm Mary McGee, 46 Snow Hill Street, long-term resident of the North End, and having you here is a breath of fresh air, and we are very optimistic. And in that vein, I would just like to ask about a few things that have been problematic in the neighborhood, and we have a few examples of problematic situations that I hope will not keep occurring. And one of those is, under your predecessor, there seemed to be a trend of considering buildings to be able to be built out as a right, where that was never the case before, where variances were always required in the past. And as a result of that policy, things that would usually at least go through a neighborhood process, and they might have gotten a variance in the end, or they might have negotiated with the neighbors. Now it's totally taken away, and the neighbors have nothing to say about that. And one example that I can give right around the corner from where I live is 55 Hull Street, which is a building that is on the Freedom Trail, and they dug out their entire basement, put in living space where there was never living space before, and they were my neighbor for 45 years, so I knew whether there was or there wasn't. But as a neighbor, I really never had any opportunity to bring that out in public forum. They were allowed to put a parapet on the building, change the roof line, which would change what they were able to put in by way of deck, which is again another issue in our neighborhood. They actually put a new facade on the building, which is on the Freedom Trail. They actually have a window that opens up into the Freedom Trail. And again, never came before the neighborhood for any of this, and it was determined that all of this was as of right. And it's just a little hard to understand how something like that could be as of right. So that's one issue that I'm asking you to please take a look at. The other is people who get variances and then don't use them or partially use them, and as a result they might be building something that might have seemed 5 years ago when they got the variance, probably wouldn't be now, but they're also clogging up our streets and sidewalks with construction equipment, other things that are there for far longer than they would have been there if they really had used this variance appropriately. And an example I can give you of that is 210 Endicott Street, which I think a lot of people are familiar with, where the street has been partial, and Endicott is kind of a major thoroughfare for the North End, especially when we've got all the problems on North Washington Street. And that street has been blocked up for that building for a long time. The sidewalk's been blocked. They've got sidewalks up. They had a variance. They didn't use it for 2 years. Then it was extended, which again is another problem that we have with people get variances, and it seems to be pretty easy to get them extended. So that's another situation that I'm just bringing up. That's an example. That's not the only one, but that is a problem in our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. So for someone to recognize, I have Assistant Commissioner Aisha Miller with us tonight. She heads up our Constituent Services Division and works along with our neighborhood coordinator. Does a great job. So to some of the ZBA questions, I won't speak to them because I think it's been well documented that a lot of things need to be looked at with the zoning board of appeals, and the mayor's hired consultants who I've spoken with, and a lot of us have spoken with, and so we're awaiting their report and their conclusion to see how we can improve how the board operates and things like when variances expire and processes in place to make sure that that folks are properly noticed on things and have an opportunity to weigh in. With respect to the Endicott Street project, I'd have to take a look at that to find out why it's taking as long as it is. But I do know that just overall, Walking in the door, in June 10th, I think was my first day, realized that, you know, short-term rentals and development were going to be the two major issues at this time for inspection services. I think on day 1 or day 2, I got a letter from this association. It was about 149 Salem Street. I won't forget it. So, yeah, who wrote that one? I'm not. But so we did it right here. And you did a good job. Well, you caught something that was missed with the.
Oh, yes, yes.
Yeah.
It was the buildings that had existed in 1976 or something like that, if they're proposed to be demolished.
Yeah,
There's a procedure that you have to go through. And I wonder whether that could be a check, a block to check when someone files an application for a building permit. Was your building built prior to whatever that date is?
Yes, so that's, we're looking to learn from these errors, because we're not perfect, and when we do find an error, we will correct it, and try to see how systematically we can prevent it from happening again. So we are very much looking at how we can do. It's very difficult for me to say that we can prevent all of this development, because I think we're seeing unprecedented interest in folks in doing development in the city. But we're doing our best to try to manage the impact that it's having on the community. One of the changes that we've made over the last few months is really enforcing the off-hour permits, because we're hearing loud and clear from folks that, you know, we feel like overdeveloped, and we feel like we should have at least a day or two without development. But we have to also balance that with some of the jobs and the fact that some work is best conducted when there's less pedestrians, less traffic on the street, and because of for public safety purposes. But we hear you loud and clear, and we're doing our best to see how we can address your concerns.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
So lastly, I want to say, I just want to talk in general about building safety, because we also had a couple of building safety issues that the North End had a few properties, right, that we needed to take a look at. So we are working, we've already begun working to make sure that we're as vigilant as we can be to keep buildings safe, but we also are working on a initiative that we want to launch in the spring to raise more awareness and to take more steps to preventing facade failures, to make sure egresses are in compliance and things of that nature. So there'll be more to talk about in the next few months.
Back and see you soon.
I'll be happy.
Thank you very much.